Pat Mesiti live at 5, and today, very, very special guest, a busy guy, a guy who's out there in the coalface. This guy will text me or call me late in hours of the in the late evening sometimes. And I know he's up early hours of the morning working for the people of his constituency. And let me just say, Mark Robinson is a wonderful, wonderful politician. He was Deputy Speaker of the Queensland Legislative Assembly, and since March 2009 has held the seat of Ujarul, formerly Cleveland, and an outstanding. I've known Mark for a long time. Mark, welcome to Live at 5.
Oh, great to be on your program, Pat, and to catch up with you, mate.
Mate, you're looking younger. The political life seems to be doing you well, I think.
Well, yeah, my wife says I'm not going grey enough, fast enough. I need to do more worrying.
Mark, our state's in trouble.
Yeah.
Labor is destroying this. Dr. Death has been threatening us with COVID. Stephen Miles, the guy that attacks the Prime Minister, who I said isn't even fit to show shiny shoes. And Anastasia just keeps coming out with lies after lies. But you're out there fighting the good fight, looking after people. I think you also help young Sarah there, who is trying to see her dad. What's at stake right now in our state if they get back in? And let loose, brother, because this is your platform.
Look, Pat, you're spot on. You know, this is probably the most important state election we've had in Queensland for a long time. We've got a very tired, lazy Labor government that has lost its way. In 2 terms, they've had 6 years and they've done nothing. They've sent us backwards in terms of the debt. For example, nearly $100 billion. Before COVID, we were on track to $100 billion state debt. That's absolutely record. Nowhere in any other state is like that. And they have, in terms of unemployment, we had the highest unemployment of all states around Australia before COVID. We had the highest number of business bankruptcies. Now that's not per capita, Pat. That's not, you know, that's actually the highest number.
Wow.
We're not as big a state numerically, population-wise, as say New South Wales. Yet we've got a much higher rate of bankruptcies of small businesses. We've mentioned the unemployment, the debt, the deficits, all of this before COVID. We go into difficult times and the cupboard's bare and they've hocked the kitchen cupboard and we are in really dire straits financially under this Labor government. They don't deserve 4 more years.
No, they don't. And then they say, Jeanette, and I call them the Three Stooges. I'm allowed to say that, you can't. You're more discreet and more of a gentleman than I am. But they say, the reason why we let the AFL in and Tom Hanks, who I'm not against AFL, I'm not against Tom Hanks, is because it actually makes money for our state. Yet, figures just out show it's going to cost the state. Amazing to me.
It's crazy. What the LNP is calling for is some border balance. We need a balance on keeping us safe. We need a balance on saving lives, yes, but on saving livelihoods. We've got a health crisis that's become a jobs and economic crisis, but they don't have to be mutually exclusive. So we need to find a way forward that's got common sense, that's got compassion. We saw the situation with young Sarah and my office. We didn't say a whole lot publicly, but behind the scenes, her family, some of them here live in Cleveland in my electorate, and they came to our office for help, and we helped them all through that week. Through that week, the health minister's office never bothered to return my office's phone calls or our emails, trying to help this desperate young lady who just had wanted to see her father before he died, and then after he passed away, couldn't even get to his funeral. And our intervention played out publicly in the end. And I was very grateful that young Sarah, as soon as she got out of her quarantine at the hotel on Friday morning, first thing she did was came to my office with some flowers to say thank you. Because behind the scenes, we are fighting for a better balance and a better Queensland.
4 more years of this means 4 more years of bankruptcies in business. I mean, I look at the suicide rate in the state right now. I mean, 6 COVID deaths, which, you know, of COVID, not with, and I'm always going on about 508 suicides. Why are they not releasing the real figures of the real problems, in your opinion, Mark? Why, if you've got nothing to hide, you hide nothing. Why this cover up?
Well, look, this government is really shrouded with secrecy. They don't like the public being aware of the information. They tend to keep us in the dark, treat us like mushrooms, and they don't like accountability. And you can now see the Premier squealing and crying about being held accountable. We're also negative because we're saying, you are responsible. I am responsible to the people of my electorate. They are my boss. They determine whether they think I'm doing a good job or not, and I'll find out on October 31 whether that's the case. But I think the jury's out on this government, that they've failed, and I don't think they like to be clean and open. We've seen the secrecy around Stradbroke Island, secret land deals now coming out. For 5 years, they've kept that under wraps instead of engaging the community, engaging business community, trusting people and working with them. We see that they are poll driven. They are not people driven anymore. And it's all about surviving the next election.
Speaking of polls, 500,000 or more of our taxpayers' money spent on. Can you just briefly explain to our listeners what they did? They should already know those details.
They are using all sorts of ways to try to finance, using government taxpayer funds for Labor's own campaign. And they've hired Mike Kaiser, a known Labor electoral rorter through the Shepparton inquiry. They're using him and others to do fake polling in order to, and a lot of it's push polling now. You'll see through all the advertising campaign that should finish once the election started. Even now, we believe they've crossed the boundary, but they will still probably push all of this advertising through the election proper when they're supposed to have ceased it. But it's all really political. It's all about keeping their jobs.
$60,000 on booze. They must have had a good time, and then $30,000 on Steve. How come I didn't get invited to those parties? Well, I don't think she'd invite me to one of her parties or you. And then $30,000 on a billboard. Again, our money. But you're not allowed to do that, right? No,
and look, I think this is where we see waste, whether it's the nurses' payroll disaster that cost $1.25 billion to fix,
or
the fake Tahitian prince. We see the wastage of this government. Right there is a starting point where we can claw back without having to reduce size of public service, without having to be an austerity-minded government. We won't be going down that direction. But there is waste. There is a bureaucracy that needs more careful guidance in the future rather than anything dramatically happening to it. We can guide our way forward and grow our economy without new taxes, without more taxes. We just need to be more careful in what we do in spending taxpayers' money.
Socialists are very good at spending other people's money. And Mark, how are you guys going to drag us out of this mess? Praying and believing, and we'll get to some in a minute, what people need to do, how they can help, because I want everyone, pastors, leaders, business leaders, to get up. Unless we do something, we can't sit idly by, and we can't sit under this thing, well, I saved your lives. She did not save our lives. We implemented strategies. Her and Dan Andrews put us at risk and then kept us away from families. And I don't want to get into that because I just saw where their values were, that, money is more important than family. And, Dr. Death saying that, I just don't get it. But Mark, what is your party going to do to get us out of this? Just give us a few things, bro, because we really need some oxygen for our soul.
Well, we believe that Queensland should be the economic powerhouse of Australia. We've got amazing agricultural, mineral, energy resources. We've got great business community. You look at the tourism and business acumen on the Gold Coast alone. We have got great business people who should be empowered to drive our economy forward. And the government is not unleashing potential that's there. We believe we need to stimulate the economy. We're going to create a decade of jobs and drag Queensland out of this recession. So we need to invest for growth. So, for example, the new Bradfield scheme, that will create many thousands of jobs over a long period of time.
Awesome.
Our $1 billion Southeast Queensland congestion busting roads initiative, $1 billion in our roads, that will generate many, many jobs. Again, job creating infrastructure that will help us get back on track where we need to be. We're going to do it without no new taxes, Pat. When we're the low taxing government, and that's continues to be our philosophy going forward. This government made up 9 new and higher taxes just in the last 2 terms. Wow. If there's a way to create a new tax, they will make it. Watch out for the big COVID tax. Under the whole, the issue of COVID, they will use that as a smokescreen for a COVID tax. It's just another way of ripping money out of your purses and wallets and bank accounts. And there's already a talk of a fishing tax. There was an environmental business $1.3 billion tax.
What about breathing? Can we be taxed on that one? Is that the breathing tax, or is it that?
Well, if they could tax oxygen, and look, a fishing tax. They're talking about taxing you, taking your kids out fishing on the weekend. Now, we don't need these new taxes. We just need to do better with the taxpayer funds we collect now and invest in growth.
Mark, when Dr. Death, Jeanette Young, says, I let these guys in because they stimulate the economy, they could put more money in the economy, I thought, well, what about all the businesses that stimulate the economy? And what about the people in New South Wales that help stimulate the economy? What about tourism? Come on, really, give me a break. But Mark, let's get down. What do you guys need right now for evil to prosper? And to me, it's not a case anymore about Labor and Liberal and One Nation, whatever. What do you need as far as help from now to election day? What can we do? Do you need manpower? Do you need volunteers? Because people want to help, but they just don't know what to do.
Yeah, all of those things. Resources in terms of, you need resources to fight elections. And to me, the most important resource are your people. Their skills, their ability, their resources themselves, the time and energy, the finances they put in. We need all that across the board to win against a finely tuned, well-resourced union machine. And let me say, at this election, they have rigged this election. They talked about gerrymandering from the past. They have gerrymandered in terms of electoral donations. They've gerrymandered in terms of who can turn up, how many at each polling booth. They've made it so that third-party groups like unions can continue to dominate elections, and it's so stacked in their way, they have used the laws of this state, sometimes with 18 minutes notice on amendments, without there being community input, to bring through these changes. So we have got it stacked against us. We have not only the donations that they receive, Labor Party, but the union bosses pouring millions. Now, the CFMEU, for example, as a union, but maybe they're not so aligned with the left of Labor, but they will still pour money in. They're complaining and whinging. They'll do their deal behind the scenes and they'll get back into the election. So the union bosses, they are running Queensland. And so we need finance, we need resource, we need individuals turning up to campaigns. That's whether it's phone canvassing, whether it's folding things and putting.
How do they do that, Mark? How do they do that?
They can be in touch with me either through my Facebook, Mark Robinson MP, or through your program some way. You can refer them on to me. My Facebook's probably the easiest one. And then wherever the person is from, a business from all over the state, I can refer them to a really good candidate or MP that we've got on the ground who can use their help in any way they can.
Mark, I don't want to throw you under a bus, but I'm not going to throw you under a bus. Pastors and church leaders. Now, I'm a believer, and I know, I don't want to push that too hard, but it's time that our pastoral community got behind. It's not enough to say, well, we've got Scott Morrison, he's a Christian Prime Minister. I mean, big whoop, we couldn't even get him into the state up to last week. What do you say to people say, oh, well, if we go against the government, or when we're not going against the government, we're, breaking Romans, or, we're not a political party, we're not involved. What do you say to that, Mark? You're out there. I mean, you're a youth leader back in the day, and and a great speaker, I've got to say as well. What do you say to that, Mark? Because we're like, I think it's what 50% of the Australian population say there are people of faith, but it seems like we're interpreting our should be right method, our decency as apathy. What do you need from them, Mark, and what can they do?
Yeah, look, you're spot on there, Pat. And as a person of faith myself, in a secular job, in a secular world, what I have learned is that if you don't stand up for your values, eventually they get trampled on. We've certainly got a society that's still based on a Judeo-Christian foundation, but there are people trying to dig up and jackhammer up those foundations. And the reality is, in the past, people were respectful of Christian people. They tended to just let us be alone. Now they're not. They're turning up to our businesses, our Facebooks, various lobby groups that have learned how to use the laws, get into parliaments, and how to turn the legislation against just good family and Christian values. That once upon a time, the church and pastors said, "Oh, politicians largely leave us alone." But now the laws are changing. We've got the worst abortion laws in the world in Queensland now that allow late-term abortions up into birth without any really checks and balances. The women don't get any support, or counselling or help. And, you know, Australians don't support those sort of values. And we've got discrimination against Christians actively now. So it really is time, pastors and churches, I know they don't want to be...
Almost any person of faith that gets discriminated upon, you know. I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
So we don't have to politicise our churches. I'm a pastor too, and I don't believe in politicising our churches and branding. I'm in the LNP, yes, and that's because those good values, family values, are supported by my party. We are a broad church, people from all kinds of backgrounds, and I respect that. However, there are lots of good candidates, and I'll be even really bipartisan. In a number of parties, there are good people worth getting behind. I am the LNP brand, and I'm happy, comfortable in my skin.
Correct. Well,
And I would encourage people, just get behind good values candidates.
And
Get rid of this government. Get rid of this government.
That's right.
Pastors, please get involved, even if it's not from the pulpit, but encourage your people to connect with good candidates around them.
Mark Robinson, it's great to see your smiling face. Thanks for being out there in the cold face. You work hard. You're working hard for your electorate. You're working hard for the state. We've got to drain the swamp, as Donald says, and we're going to get good people back in power. It is a right versus wrong, a good versus evil. This is not about Labor, Liberal, One Nation. This is right and wrong, good and bad. And if we don't, listen to me, everyone out there, if we don't fight and show up for the rights we have, please don't cry over all the losses of our rights and our freedoms that our children and grandchildren will lose.
Absolutely.
4 more years of this is a slow death, and we need to turn around. We've got to turn around this thing. Mark, thanks so much for being on Live at 5.
My pleasure, Pat, and thanks for having me, and to all your viewers.
God bless you. Thanks, Mark.
You too. Bye-bye.